Okay guys, today we're going to be looking at how to get the most out of your textbook. Here's a sample conversation I might take for any one of my classes. Where can you find the answer to that question, guys? Well, in our books. Perhaps you can narrow that down a bit. How? Well, the answer to that question is in this video. So please, watch. Many of us are familiar with the table of contents, and we know to turn to that pretty quickly and easily. We're even familiar with the index in the back of the book if the teacher asks a question about finding information on, or the definition in the glossary. But believe it or not, our textbooks can be used for many, many other things. You might ask, what else am I going to need the textbook for? Well, for one, doing your weekly chapter notes. 2, preparing for a group quiz presentation. 3, preparing for a class debate. 4, answering a question during a class discussion. 5, preparing for an in-class essay assignment. 6, preparing for one of our many group projects. This is why you need your book every time notes are due. Now, while I'll be the first to admit that the book is far from a perfect resource, it is, however, a helpful tool in our arsenal in understanding history this year. Before we get anywhere, though, we need to ask ourselves, if history is an argument, well then whose argument are we receiving? Let's take a look at these authors. Get a look at what sort of background they come from. Do any of them share a background with you? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? That's something worth analyzing. And one of the key things I want to draw your attention to is that we learned this past week that primary sources are critical for understanding a point in history, and many times they're superior to secondary sources. Well, we better know where to find them. Again, a spot can be found in your book. We can find Supreme Court cases, as well as links to today. Guys, I got to tell you that one of the key things I look for in your essays and your presentations is the fact that you can connect the historical events that we're looking at to issues we're facing today. Here's an area where you can find such information at the beginning of your book. I might ask you where something is. Finding information about imperialism in America in 1900, or any of the cattle trails, the U.S. highway system. All of that can be found in this beginning part of your book. Charts, timelines, graphs, all of it. Here the primary sources are taken by each individual unit and each of the people that we're looking at. When in giving the class presentations the way we're giving, it's helpful to know the multiple voices that make up a given period. For instance, later this semester we're going to be doing a progressive era press conference. Any of these voices here may prove very, very helpful to your case. Many students, though, are concerned about preparing for any tests. Is this information going to be on the test? Well, one of the things comes down to, in your book, you can find standards-based test questions and quiz questions. I might even gather some of these for test questions in the future. We should also know, though, how to approach multiple choice questions. Not all multiple choice questions are written the same way. It's important to kind of analyze how to break them down to ensure that we understand them correctly before answering. This book even gives you tips how to read effectively here. This here is becoming an active reader. They're pointing out to you where to find key terms, where to focus reading. What's great about those reading focus questions is that they allow you to look over the past few chapters and ask yourself the question. If you can't answer that question, you really do need to go back over those questions or the reading again. Academic vocabulary is here. And by the way, many of my study guide items will be their academic vocabulary as well. They're telling you precisely where to find that. It's also always helpful to understand how to be an active reader, how to thoroughly understand what it is that you're going through. Here are some steps that your authors have provided for you. Too many times in history, it's easy to lose sight of the forest and get caught up in the trees. Well, your book also here helps you identify the main idea from the details. By confusing those, you can miss critical information. These are all useful tips. Summarizing, making inferences. Summarizing requires you to take massive amounts of information and condense it down into maybe a paragraph. Making inferences allows you to read beyond the text. You need to see information that isn't directly written in the text, but makes sense of what it is that the author is trying to say. These sections here can help you with that. You also need to know what the specific paragraphs are telling you. This is sequenced information, and here they're using cause and effect reasoning. This week, you're learning about how to identify cause and effect reasoning and also how to evaluate it. You need to identify that when you are reading as well, so you can quickly pick that apart. You learned resources this week how to do that, but I also want you using the resources in your book as well. Again, here we have making generalizations, another topic we covered this week. But historians are typically drawing conclusions. What conclusions are they drawing? Typically, it's important to kind of look at what it is that they're trying to make sense of and what answers or solutions are coming to it in the end. Some of your test questions, either in my class or on the STAR tests, require you to look at pie charts and bar graphs. This is a quick, easy way to digest multiple bits of information in a quick, easy, visible format, as are line graphs. These are important to understand. The book, again, gives you resources for how to pick those apart. One of the key things that these new standards that we're looking at are how to analyze primary sources. We've already clarified that primary sources are critical to our understanding of history, and many times are superior to secondary sources. But how do you pick apart that language that's 300, 400, 500 years old? Again, here are some tips for how to do that. Political cartoons. You've already had some examples of warm-ups from me this past week that have used visuals. How do you pick apart those visuals? What should we pay attention to? Recognizing bias is one of the most difficult parts of reading history. Students frequently struggle with that. Again, the book gives you some tips for how to do that. What sort of words are they using? What kind of document is it? What is this primary source saying as opposed to the evidence that we're reading about? What's the author ultimately trying to do with this, and what's their point of view? Sometimes the words that they choose can really indicate the level of view that they have, and the level of extremity determines what that view might be. Again, some visuals. You're going to see a lot of visuals used in my class this year, typically with warm-ups. You need to be able to pick those apart. You'll also be giving a series of oral presentations. Most of your quizzes this year will be oral presentations, done as a group, not as an individual, but won't it be helpful if each one of you understands some of the key components of making an oral presentation? Also, as great as this book is, it does lack in a number of primary sources that will hit on some of the key questions or essay questions we'll be using this year, which is why I will be relying upon a good number of document-based questions as well. Many of these essays will be multi-day assignments, but we will need to be able to quickly digest these documents, and again, here we have some tools for doing that. And guys, these are just the resources at the front of your book. There are a wealth of tools in the back of your book too, aside from the glossary and index we looked at earlier. You can find quick summaries of major events in history as well. We've got the Great Awakening, the American Revolution, and a variety of others, and you can just get a quick synopsis. I might ask you a quick question of what was this event? What's the significance? That's laid out for you in a variety of events in the back of the book. We'll also be looking at a series of Supreme Court cases this year. And again, the back of your book has a whole series of those cases. It also has the current Supreme Court justices that are on the bench right now. History is made up of a lot of people. And those people are also featured in the back of your book in a biographical dictionary. We can see anywhere from Lucille Ball to Louis Armstrong. If you get a question on any of these people and need to answer it quickly, here's a reference for you. A series of maps, not just American, but hemispheric, so the Western Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, political maps, physical geography maps of various places of the world that's going to be very useful as well. And here we can find the primary source library from the Magna Carta all the way to a Cesar Chavez speech in 1984 and President Bush's address to the nation after the 9/11 tragedy. I hope this video has given you some ideas and resources about how to best use your book and meet with a great deal of success this year. Happy reading, everybody.